Down. I'm Ari Gronich, and this is Create a New Tomorrow podcast. Welcome to Create a New Tomorrow. I'm your host, Ari Gronich. Thank you so much for listening in. Remember to rate, review, comment, like, subscribe, all those kinds of things so that we can start conversations and continue this on. Today with me, I have Nelson Tressler, and he is an interesting person, has an amazing history. I'm going to let him kind of tell you a little bit about that. But he's the author of The Unlucky Sperm Club and founder and CEO of IGOTSMARTER. So just the two names alone tend to reveal themselves a little bit, but I'd like you to kind of explain to the audience what it is that made you in the author of The Unlucky Sperm Club and how you got smarter.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me on, Ari. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I have quite the origin story. So my mom became pregnant with me when she was 15 years old. She was one of 15 children. Her father was the local trash collector in a small town. And while she was pregnant with me, her father drove a car into the town square. And there he spotted two police officers. He stuck a gun out the window and opened fire, killing one of the police officers and critically wounding another. My grandfather was eventually brought to stand trial. He was facing the death penalty. And during his trial, my mother testified to the jury that the reason that her father had shot and killed that police officer was that police officer had raped her, and she was now pregnant with his baby, me. And that's kind of where it started. My grandfather's first trial ended in a hung jury because of my mom's testimony. They took the death penalty off the table, but he was eventually found guilty and served the rest of his life, more than 40 years behind bars, pretty much leaving behind, his large family of 15 kids, including my mom and now me, in a small town to kind of deal with the circumstances of what had happened. My story, continues to go on. It doesn't get any easier from there. My mom eventually becomes 21 and starts to go to bars, and there she finds a peach of a man who eventually becomes my stepfather. Come to find out that he's an alcoholic, that he is physically and emotionally abusive to me and my mom on a daily basis, and having to deal with that situation. Eventually, my mom has 4 more children. And because of the lifestyle that's being lived in my home, a lot of the caring for, basic needs for my brother and sister fall upon me. And that has a dramatic effect upon, my social life and my schooling life. I remember looking down at my report card when I was in the 4th grade, excited to see who I'd have for 5th grade, and seeing that I had straight F's on my report card and that I'd be repeating the 4th grade. I was placed into special education. I couldn't read, couldn't write. I still can't spell. And eventually, flash forward, my stepfather was walking home drunk from a bar one night, and there was somebody else driving home drunk from that bar. They ended up hitting and killing him. It was at this time that my mom now has 5 children. She had dropped out of school in the 8th grade, never worked outside of the home. And as rough as her life has been to this point, losing my stepfather was really, left her with no hope. And it was at this time that she decided that she was going to take her own life. And fortunately, she was not successful, but she was placed on a psychiatric hold. And at this time, my family got split up among other family members to go live with them. I went to go stay with my grandmother, who is the wife of the man who shot and killed the police officer. And it was my mom eventually recovered and got out of the hospital, but it was at this time that she decided she wasn't going to be able to care for all of us. And I ended up going and living with my grandmother permanently. And for the first time in my life, I kind of had that stable household, even though, I'm living with my gram who, some of her 15 children are still living at home. And, my gram was a saint, she's raising 5 or 6 other cousins for whatever reasons. But for the first time, I kind of had a stable household to live in. There was no alcohol, there was no abuse. And even though education wasn't a huge priority, my gram at least expected that you were going to go to school, probably for her sanity, to get rid of some kids for a few hours in the day. But for that first time, I was able to kind of really start to reflect upon my life and what direction it was going. And I remember, one time I was in the 7th grade and a counselor came from the local university to talk to us about what we needed to do to get into college. And kind of the bells and whistles went off in my head. And I thought to myself, you know what, if I could be, if I could graduate from college, maybe I could change the direction my life was headed. And, anytime you put those thoughts in your head that you want to do something different or something that it's going to be difficult, that voice in the back of your head starts screaming at you all the reasons that you can't do it. And I remember thinking, well, you're going to try to be, graduate from college. No one in my extended family had ever gone to college. Only 2 people had ever even graduated from high school from my mom's family. And here I am, I'm in special ed. I can't read, I can't write, I can't spell. And I'm talking about going to college. But, I didn't listen to those voices. My life was not where I wanted it to be. And I thought if I could do this, if I could accomplish this goal, that I really could change the direction of my life and eventually, the life that I was going to give my future family. Flash forward, 12 years later, 4 different colleges, 4 years in the Air Force, I finally became that first person in my family to graduate from college.
Wow, congratulations. This is that's a tremendous story to begin with. What were some of the things that you feel are different about you and your mindset than some of the other people who have experienced similarly difficult beginnings, and yet, they're still in that spot of wanting to have hope. They're still living, right? So they still have at least a smidgen of hope. And if you're talking directly to them, they're in the audience. If you're directing these comments to them specifically, what do you think was the difference maker in you that allowed you to gain that kind of shift and change and pivot?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a few things. I mean, the one thing I've always had that long-term perspective. I've always looked into the future and really wanted to kind of realize where I was heading. And I knew the future was coming. And, I also always knew that I was in charge of my ship, that I was the captain of my ship. And, you hear that saying, you can't control the winds, but you can absolutely control the way that you set your sails. And I think so many people want to assign their problems and, their heartaches upon other people or other things or what's going on in the world. And as soon as you assign your problems to somebody else or something else, you lose all control. And I think one of the things that has helped me in my life is I've taken control for everything, and I've absolutely taken control for my own success. And as soon as I've done that, then I'm in control. And there's bad things that happen. It hasn't been a smooth ride, but when you're in control, you can overcome that stuff that pops up. But as soon as you start blaming it on somebody else or something else, you give away that control. And now the only way that things get better is if they change or the economy changes or whatever you've given control to changes. And then you're helpless just sitting there hoping that somebody's going to change it for you.
Yeah, it's interesting because the premise of the show is kind of the world sucks, the systems that we're living under suck. We've created these systems. My saying is, we made this shit up, and we can make it up better. And how do we then activate our visions for a better world? And it sounds to me like the number one thing that you've done is taken personal responsibility for the world around you. And instead of assigning the responsibility to the world around you to heal or fix you. And that's a really interesting perspective, because it takes away that ability to be a victim, and it gives you the ability to be a victor. But what do you say to the people who really like being a victim, and really, like, that's where they're getting their juice, and they don't see that they can get the juice from from that victor versus victim?
Yeah, I mean, you touched on my book, and the subtitle to that is, "You're not a victim of your circumstances. You're a product of your choices." That's what I would say is, and you talk about changing the world, or the world around us. But you know what? If you focus on your own world and changing your own world, you don't need to change everything else that's out there affecting everything else. I mean, I can only control the things that I can control. And I think a lot of times as people want to change, they want to change, try to stop the waves of the ocean. But, what they really need to focus on is changing themselves. And when you start to really focus on yourself and changing your world, that's when the world will change. Because the only thing that you're in control of is you. You can't control these other things. And as soon as you start changing your world and start changing your mindset and changing your attitude, that's when the world starts to change for you, because we all live in the same world, but we all don't look at the world the same way. And if we're going to find what we're looking for. If we're looking for everything that's wrong in the world, or everything that's wrong with the people around us, guess what? You're going to find it. But if you're looking for everything that's good in the world and the good things about the people that you surround yourself with, you'll find that as well.
Awesome. So let's go get into some techniques, some of the minutia of what you talk about in your book, because I don't like to just kind of throw out the phrases and throw out the theories and the concepts. I like to give the audience things that they can do, and actionable things that they can do. And I'm gonna use me as an example, so that I'm gonna let you kind of refer back to this particular thing.
Okay.
So my entire life, there's been parts of me that have felt like I'm a burden, right? So
Yep.
I was
I know.
molested and abused, and growing up, I had medical conditions, so people, my family needed to take care of me a little bit differently than, say, my brother, who didn't have all those issues, right? So he may not have that same feeling of, I'm a burden, and so therefore I can't ask for help, therefore I can't do this, or there are things that were in my life were out of bounds, so to speak, like asking for help. I had to do everything myself. I have to, it's like those kinds of issues. I know a lot of people have that, but they also have others. So why don't you just talk to that a little bit, and then how in your book you kind of, and I don't normally promote somebody's book, but I am going to give you the opportunity to explain the techniques, the tips and tricks that are in there that help people get through whatever it is that they're going through, and hopefully non-conceptually, more of like actionable kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, and thank you. I mean, one of the biggest things that ever changed my world and my outlook on life is the concept of things only have the meaning that you're willing to give them. And I mean, that hit me like a ton of bricks. Is you get to give meaning to everything that happens to you in this world. And when you get to give meaning to why on earth would you ever give anything a negative meaning? And I know, I've lived through some horrible things and some horrible circumstances in my childhood and in my, adult life. But what I found is when you dig deep enough and hard enough, and like I said before, if you're really looking for something good, or what I can learn about this, or how can I use this to, get me to where I want to go, you'll find something. You'll find something in there. You get to tell your own, your own story. So you get to tell yourself what this means to you. And as soon as you start assigning good things to think, supposedly bad things that happen to you, as soon as you start to see the good in those things and give it a positive meaning, that's when you start to, get energy from it. And, I told you guys my origin story, and that used to drain me. That used to weaken me. I literally ran across the country to get away from everything that story represented it to me. And for the last, 17, 18 years, nobody knew about that story except my wife. My kids didn't know about it. My friends didn't know about it. Nobody, because I was running from it. But then I decided, you know what? That happened to me for a reason. All those things happened to me for a reason. And then I started to say, you know what if I could share that story? What if people would hear this story and get inspiration and motivation to take control of their own lives? And all of a sudden, I gave those circumstances in my life a positive meaning. And now, instead of it draining me and me hiding from it, now it strengthens me. And I get fired up whenever I talk about this story, because I know that there are people out there who are going to hear my story, and they're going to realize that, they are not, a victim of circumstances. They're a product of the choices. And all they have to do is start taking control of it, start giving these negative things a positive meaning in their lives. And it will make all the difference to them.
It sounds like from pain to purpose is, a distillate of what you just said, right? You take the pain and you turn it into a purpose. So in my life, I do a lot of work with athletes who are injured, with emotional release work, I've worked a lot with vets and PTSD because of the experiences that I had growing up. So I turned my pain into purpose, and that allows me to, and it may be a slow healing, but it allows me to heal me as I turn that purpose onto other people. And it's kind of interesting that you've stated that. I feel like everybody needs to turn their pain into a purpose and then act on it. So that's the next step, is now that they have that purpose, now that that pain is rewired in their head of this happened for me and not to me, then
love that. Yeah. Yeah. No, and I mean, the one thing that you think of pain, you think, well, pain's there. It can be there to help us, right? If you get too close to a fire or, something, that pain, lets you know, hey, get back. And again, it's the meaning that you're willing to give it. And it's not that the pain's not there. It's that you're giving it a different meaning. You're giving it a positive spin. You're giving it, a meaning to where it's going to motivate you to help others who are maybe going through that, and look at it a little bit differently. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't take away all the bad things that have happened to you. It's just, I love that you said, this isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And when you start to look at things that way, is like, why is this here? Why is this here? What is it here to show me, teach me, help me, strengthen me? When you start to look at it that way, then you gain energy from it. You gain, a way to bring it into your life and really, propel your success, as opposed to, shackling you to, a bad situation that, is going to kind of keep you tethered where you are right now.
Yeah, it's funny. Jim Rohn. I like to kind of quote Jim Rohn a bit, and Buckminster Fuller was the inspiration for the book A New Tomorrow. And Bucky,
Ari, I think you froze. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, go ahead.
We can always pause because the editor can, take out stuff. So,
Okay.
so editor, take out the blanks and the freezings. What was I saying?
Jim Rohn.
Jim Rohn, Buckminster Fuller. So Bucky, who was one of the inspirations for the book A New Tomorrow, found himself in his late 20s at the edge of the Detroit Lake, I guess, in Michigan. And he was about to walk in and kill himself. And something said to him while he was knee deep in water, no, not the right thing to do. And he ended up turning that pain into a purpose. He became one of the greatest thought leaders of the last century, created the geodesic dome. I mean, he contributed a massive amount to society. And as I was saying, Jim Rohn, who says things like, you can't change the wind, don't change the rain, don't change the sunshine.
Yeah.
When you learn to change yourself, everything gets better. And this is obviously a paraphrase of what Jim Rohn says, but the other part of what he talks about is that kind of mentality is, he'll say, in the first 5 years of my career, I was penniless and broke and working really hard. And the next 5 years, I became a millionaire. And he says, he asks kind of satirically, do the next 5 years have to be like the previous 5 years? No, because we are humans and we can change the course of our lives forever by making different decisions. And he says the number one thing that he did is worked on himself and not his business. He worked on himself. And that is what made the difference in his business and in his entire life, to where he could become this very sought after consultant, speaker, and so on. So it sounds kind of like similar to what you're saying. So why don't
I love Jim Rohn. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let's get back into that. Somebody wants to change themselves. Where would you say that they should start?
Right where they're at. I mean, that's where we all have to start. And I think a lot of people want to be in a certain situation or wait for a certain time, wait next week, next month, next year, whatever, but start right where you're at. One of my other favorite quotes is, we don't necessarily have a knowledge problem. We know what we need to do. We have an execution problem. We just don't do what we know we need to do when we need to do it. And, start where you're at, and, what that one thing that you can do, no matter how small it is, just do it. And it's kind of like walking through a thick cloud of fog. You really can't see too far ahead of you until you take one step. And then all of a sudden you can see one more step in front of you. And we can't let that wall of fog stop us, because we don't see what's beyond it. When you will see beyond it is as you continue to take those small steps, and you start to see a little further and a little further and a little further. So start exactly where you're at. And, again, you don't have a knowledge problem. You have an execution problem. You're just not following through with what you need to know. And if you really do feel like you have a knowledge problem, go to Google, and you have 1 billion results in less than a second. Pick one of those things and just start working on it now.
Yeah. So, I call it Dr. Google these days, because that's how people are finding out about medicine.
Yeah.
But, if I were to get 1 billion results asking, how do I change my life today? What would be some specific phrases that you might want to use to narrow down the search? Because people are going to get a billion responses with a billion different ideas.
Yeah.
And so the suggestion that I have, and I would ask you this is, what do we choose? I'm overwhelmed. There's too many choices.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on it, and I use a lot of Jim Rohn's theories and thoughts. I've loved him for 20 years, so you'll see a lot of that stuff in my stuff. But working on yourself is absolutely the place to start. I mean, Jim Rohn is exactly right. I mean, if you want something better, you need to become better. And I've used goals in every area of my life. I mean, I became obsessed after, graduating from college. I became obsessed with goals and personal development and really thinking about, the version of myself that I had been, and then actually realizing that, this version of me is not necessarily the version of me that needs to continue, that I could get better, that I could figure out things. As I worked on myself, all of a sudden the things that you want actually start to come to you because you're becoming that person that can realize those goals. So where I would tell people to start is get crystal clear on what you want. Like, know exactly what you want in your life, know what that is, and then be crystal clear on what it's going to take to achieve it. And then pick small steps and start working on it every single day. And you're going to struggle. You're going to fall down. You're going to forget about it for a day or a week or maybe even a month, but then get back up and keep going, because time is our most precious resource. I mean, there's nothing we can ever do to get a second of it back. So, I mean, I try to live my life where I don't waste any time, and I give time that reverence that it is. I mean, without it, there's nothing we can do. So use it. It's, time's the great equalizer too. Everybody gets the same 24 hours in a day. It depends on what you're willing to do with it. That's going to make make your life the way that your life ends up being.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pause for a second. So hold on one second. I'm just going to pause the recording. Somebody's at my door. All right. So I wanted to start somewhere like I think that from what you said, start with the goal. I want to take it a step back. And my suggestion is to start where you're at, meaning to write down every single thing that you feel good, bad, ugly about yourself, about where you're at, and get really crystal clear, like you said, on where you are, and in place where you want to go and what is stopping you in the middle, right? So where's the barrier between where you want to be and where you are now? But I feel like if people start just with the goal, then they may not get to the things that are stopping them, because they're just they're not going to identify those things. So that would be the only caveat I would say to what you were talking about, is that you might want to start with just writing a list. Here's where I'm at. Here's my history, and get it down on paper, because it's going to be your origin story, kind of like you have, for when you are in a completely different space. So it's going to be the thing that inspires you. It's going to be the thing that moves you forward. It's going to be the thing that is going to allow others to really connect with you as you're moving towards those goals.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, not to promote my program, but I Got Smarter, the O and I Got Smarter, stands for the obstacles that you're going to run into. And we all kind of know where our struggles are and what's going to happen that could kind of knock us off, reaching our goals. So it's so important to kind of write out those obstacles before you come to them, so that when you do come to them, exactly, oh, here's this obstacle, I knew this was going to happen, and here's what I said I was going to do when it popped up. And now you don't have to kind of rethink it or, be shocked that all of a sudden this popped up. It's like watching that horror movie, for the first time, it's going to, somebody pops out and scares you, it's going to scare you and kind of knock you off your game. But if you've watched that movie 5 times and this is the scene that's going to pop up and scare you, it's not going to affect you the same way. It's the same thought process is, I know this obstacle is going to come, whatever it is. And here's how I'm going to overcome it when it does come.
Yeah. The other thing that I would just kind of just popped in my head as you were saying that is journaling on a regular basis and saying to yourself, writing in here, I had this reaction to this person's doing this thing, or this thing's doing this thing. And this was the reaction, and then try to trace back to where you first had that reaction or why you might have had that reaction, because that would at least give you a little more clarity on where it is that you're tending to be in reaction versus response, and and so on. But that was just something that, like I said, it popped up as you were saying that. But try to write down, here's what happened as a fact. Like, my car's tire got a nail in it, for instance.
Yeah.
And I reacted like, why me? This is always happening to me. And then what is it that caused that reaction in you, instead of, hey, I needed a new tire. I mean, this is perfect opportunity, right? You can see it those different ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, the goal program, that I've touched on, it has that journal. Every night you're journaling, and every night you're having, our evening ritual is reflecting upon what happened in the day, and, what went well, what didn't go well, and how you reacted. I mean, it's all about being very mindful of what's going on in your life. And that way, when you're mindful, when you know what's going on, when you know what's happened, when you know what how you reacted to it, then you can take steps to really react in a way that's going to fulfill your goals, as opposed to if you're just kind of going through life without purpose and without really reflecting upon what's going on. All of a sudden you wake up and it's 10 years later and you're like, crap, I thought I would be so much further ahead, or I thought I would be here, or I thought I would be there, because, you weren't really living life with purpose. You weren't reflecting upon your life each day and realizing that, things are happening to me and I have control of them.
Right. So, listening to you, like, think about, for the audience, think about a boat that is floating out to sea, and it has no one at the helm. So the rudder is just kind of moving you every which way with the waves, right? And then imagine that you have the GPS and you have it set to course. You still have to set and reset and assess, are you on course? But at least you have a trajectory of where you're going to go. I think that the like planes are almost like 80% off course for their entire flight. But because they have that trajectory of, this is where I'm going, they always know how to get back on course. And if you don't have that trajectory, there's no course. So you can arrive at an undesigned destination. This is another gym run, or a well-designed destination. And the idea is that we're going to arrive at well-designed destinations, because that's what we plug into our GPS.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great analogy. I mean, you can just kind of be thrown from wave to wave, as you live your life, or you can have that crystal clear destination that you want to reach. And just like you said, I mean, with an airplane, you might fall off a course, or things might not go the way that you want them to. And it's, if you want to get to a certain area in your life, you're going to have to make course corrections. And that's the great thing when you have concrete goals, is that you can make those course corrections. But if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know what your goals are, it's impossible to make a course correction when you don't know where you're going. And that's what goals do for you, is they give you that destination. This is where I want to be. This is when I want to be there. This is why I want to be there. And now all of a sudden, as the world tosses you and you have those ebb and flows in your life, you can make those course corrections, whether they're very small ones or they're big ones. But you're going to end up there no matter how much you were off course on your journey. You're eventually going to make it there if you don't quit.
All right. So let me ask you this. You mentioned in your history 4 years of Air Force. So I just want to know how that influenced this kind of part of your thinking, and what your the benefits of your experience in the Air Force gave you towards making this, next journey in your life.
Yeah, I mean, the Air Force checked a lot of boxes for me. I mean, the reason that I joined the Air Force was I went away to college I played football, but I couldn't afford to go back. I got a couple bills in the mail and wasn't able to pay them. And, I knew what I wanted. I wanted a college degree. And, so I had to figure out a way to pay for it. And the Air Force was kind of that way, the GI Bill. But the Air Force also checked a box that got me out of that small town that I was in, to where I had so much baggage and represented, so much stuff that I had to overcome. So when I joined the Air Force, I figured out how to get money for school, and then it got me away from that town. And all of a sudden, what I realized is I could be anybody that I wanted to be, because there was no more, that kid, who was involved in all of that stuff. I literally could become Nelson Nobody. I could become whoever I wanted to be. So there was that. And then, the Air Force taught me so many things. I mean, it taught you discipline. It taught you responsibility. It opened your eyes to contrast, like a whole big world out there. I was over in Saudi Arabia and got to see how those cultures lived, and over in Turkey and see how that culture lived. So the Air Force was, definitely a great decision for me, and definitely changed the direction of my life and gave me a lot of tools and knowledge that, I eventually ended up using and continue to use to this day.
So when you were overseas and experiencing these different cultures, especially in kind of war-torn countries, what was your experience of the people there and how they dealt with the kind of stresses of life that war and obviously there's a little more control from the society,
Yeah.
the kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was eye-opening because, I'm this, I'm this young guy from a small little town and haven't been exposed to a lot of stuff. And then you go over to Saudi Arabia and you see, the way that women have to dress and act. And I remember being in a convenience store and walking down an aisle, and there were these women in their black robes, with only a slit in their eyes showing. And as soon as I walked into that aisle, they literally ran from me. And, come to find out that they can be nowhere near another man, or let alone a U.S. serviceman. So, that was eye opening to me, the different ways that, people were treated. And, when I went to Turkey, a lot of poverty in Turkey. And, I would see young boys, literally 5, 6, 7 years old, who were orphans, out there begging on the street for survival, to get food to eat another day. And believe me, I mean, that was a slap in the face, because I was probably still in a little bit of victim mode and thinking about my childhood and what I had to deal with. And, to see these guys, it kind of put me in my place. And you always realize that no matter what situation you're in, there is always somebody praying to be in your exact situation, because of as bad as their situation is. So kind of having that mindset. So yeah, I learned all that stuff. And I think the biggest thing was contrast. It gave me that contrast of the life that I was living to the things that were out there. And contrast can help you in so many different ways. I mean, it can help you to show you that there's a lot worse things out there, but it also can show you that there's a lot better things out there that maybe you can strive to realize those things. So contrast is a great thing in your life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What kinds of things do you suggest nowadays, like that you might have not suggested 10 years ago, that you've learned in the last 10 years about yourself and about how to do what you're doing, which is changing the world? So how can you take that focus of I've been here, I'm now here, and I'm going there, and make it concrete for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is to do it. I mean, we talked a little bit about being clear on what your vision is. I mean, you can't really reach a destination if you're not clear where you want to go. So that's the first step, is to sit down and really figure out what you want to do with your life, what direction you want your life to go, and make that crystal clear. And then figure out why you want that, and make sure that it's a strong why. And then, setting out and just starting. I mean, there's so many people that want to wait until all the traffic lights are green before they start on their journey. And it never happens. I mean, it's kind of paralysis by analysis, if you've ever heard that, where people, they sit there and they want to make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And, I'm in the exact right situation to start this. Don't do it. You know what? Take that first step. You know where you want to go. You know why you want to go there. Take that first step and start. Don't wait, because there are so many people that are just sitting back, waiting for that perfect situation to start doing what they want to do. And I just wrote about this today. I mean, today is Pretend You Are a Time Traveler Day. And, one of the things that I kind of thought of when I saw that was, somebody once told me the definition of hell is when the person that you could have became in this life meets the person that you did become. And that's the definition of hell. And I think we're all going to end up there one day. We're all going to end up at the end of our lives, and we're going to look back and, we all hear it, so many people are, they don't have regrets over what they did. They have regrets over what they didn't do. And, we're all going to have a life with some regrets, but, try not to have that regret that you were afraid to go after your goals and your dreams.
Yeah. So let's see. Ready, fire, aim, fire, ready.
That's my motto right there, baby.
Ready. Which one is it? Fire, aim, ready.
It's ready, fire, aim.
Okay. So, some people will say the opposite, which is fire, aim, ready, or aim, fire, ready, at least, so that you're getting at least the action moving, and then you can get ready for what you just did. But
yeah.
It's an interesting way of looking at it, because if you're a perfectionist, you're going to ready, but you're going to ready and you're never going to fire, and you're never going to aim, because you're still trying to get ready.
Yep.
If you're on that mid-range, you might aim and then fire and then get ready. And if you're on the other side, you're going to fire before you do anything, aim and ready. And the truth is, I've had friends in business, that were that fire, aim, ready, and they would always do this spike, right? So because they did massive action, no matter what, they would have a spike of results, and then it would fall, and then another spike of results, and then it would fall, because they at least got something out there, instead of that analysis paralysis, instead of that need for perfection. I know I have that need for perfection a bit in me. I want to make sure that the grammar is correct and the commas are in the right place, and that the words flow properly and all the spelling is proper. And, I had somebody tell me once, said, proper spelling has never made me money.
Thank goodness for that, because I still can't spell.
That's what you said at the beginning, and I wanted to latch on to that a little bit. So, what would you consider to be the biggest asset that somebody can take from the words that you're using, from the things and the thoughts that you're saying? If somebody was listening to this and going, "Okay, I'm kind of getting that. I'm understanding what he's saying, but the execution side, I'm not really sure how to execute the concepts that are in my head." So if that's the biggest portion that's needed to happen to get the results, how do you get somebody from concept to action?
Well, I mean, one of the things that I use in my program is a success partner. I mean, you might tell yourself you want to do something. You might tell yourself, I'm going to do this every single day, and you might. But a lot of times, people who keep their goals to themselves, when something pops up, they fall short. But as soon as you introduce somebody else who knows about that goal, who knows what your dreams are and what your plans are, now all of a sudden there's somebody else out there that you've told you're going to do this. And in the back of your mind, you don't want to let them down. You don't want them to see that you're going to fail. And, that's kind of the secret sauce that I think is, we call them success partners, because they're not there to hold us accountable. The only thing that you're doing is accountability is you want to be accountable to do the things that you said you're going to do. And that's what this success partner is there for. They're there to encourage you, to motivate you, to know that you're not in this alone. And you're there to do the same for them. So you're both seeking and striving to achieve your goals. And it's that support system. And there's been studies out there that you're 95% more likely to achieve your goals or to do what you said you were going to do as soon as somebody else knows about them and you have that kind of success partner in your corner.
Okay, so I'm going to caveat that as well, because that's what I like to do. I'm a little bit of a contrarian. So there's a theory that if you put something out, that you're going to have the success be at a percentage higher because you put the thing out there, and now you have to keep your word because you put it out there. There's another theory that says that you want to hold back on telling people because then you don't want to dissipate the energy that is going towards that goal. And then there's yet another thing about the crab box, which is if you tell people where you're going, they're going to try to hold you down and hold you back, and you're going to create more obstacles. So the caveat that I'm putting forth is, when you talk to somebody about what it is that you're doing, you need to make sure that you're telling the right person and the right people who are going to be the supportive people versus the people who are going to kind of be those crabs in the crab box holding you back and telling you all the reasons why not.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the crab bucket, man. I use that in my book. So, I told with my family, I kind of used that to where I got accepted into college, and I got all kinds of mixed results where, or you can't even spell. How the heck are you going to go to college? Or, I guess they're letting anybody into college who has a check. They better try cashing your check first. So I got all of that stuff. And, I talk a little bit about why people act that way. But again, we talked about that. What meaning are you going to give that? I mean, you know what? Tell me I can't do something. Tell me that I'm not good enough or I'm going to fail. And I'm going to show you that I'm not only going to do it, I'm going to do it much, much better just to show you. So what mindset are you bringing when you have those haters? And, you got to understand what haters are. A lot of times the haters, it has nothing to do with you or what you're doing. It has to do with them and what they're doing. And when you kind of realize that, then it actually strengthens you and it gives you fuel to reach your goals. And that's how I look at it. And as far as the other theories of keeping everything to yourself, you know what? I can kind of see how people can think that. I don't agree with it at all. I mean, I've done it both ways in my life. I mean, I've set goals and no one's known who they are. I've written them all down, and no one knows when I've accomplished them. No one knows if I failed at them. But as soon as I kind of brought a group together and everybody knew everybody's goals and they knew what you were shooting for, all of a sudden I knew I was going to have to see those people. And I knew they were going to ask me, hey, how's this going? And how's that going? And all of a sudden now I'm just not responsible to myself. I'm responsible to them. And no one wants to fail. And when there's somebody out there who knows what you're working at, now all of a sudden there's somebody who knows if you're going to fail or not, and not in a bad way. I mean, these people don't want to see you fail because they want you to be successful. And we can talk about surrounding yourself with like-minded people and people who have your back and who are there to support you and understand that, you know, there's more than enough success out there in the universe to go around 100 times. And just because you're successful doesn't mean that takes away from my pie of success. So there's all those different strategies and techniques and thoughts to think about as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my guests, Bert Oliva, is he's a mindset guy. He's been around 20 plus years. He does fire walks and, you know, glass walking and all those kind of things, human potential expert. And he says, you want to go out and you want to find 5 haters a day, because if you're finding 5 haters, you're going to find at least that or more who are supporters.
Oh yeah.
So the idea isn't to avoid the haters, it's to seek them out, which is kind of like why I like doing the show, because it's a very contrary, you know, polarizing show in some cases, because we believe in nuanced thinking, minutia instead of absolutes of extremism, you know, on either side. Okay, let's look at the data, let's look at it and let's find out what it is that we're trying to accomplish and do it. So it was a good reminder, what you were just saying about finding the haters, because it's okay to polarize. The only part of that that's the problem is the mindset and what it is that you make that mean, which we are, you know, meaning making machines. Human beings are meaning making machines. We can make meaning out of anything. And if you're somebody who had been bullied in the past, if you're somebody who had been, you know, taken advantage of or whatever, you could have it mean that you're not being liked, or you could have it mean that I'm getting stuff done that the rest of the population isn't getting done. And so they may not understand it right now, but in 10 years, they're going to be like, why didn't I get on that bandwagon?
Yeah. And I love that you brought up haters. I mean, because, you know, when you put yourself out there, like I had been really close knit, you know, a lot of the businesses that I own, people didn't even know that I owned them. You know, I was just that kind of guy. I never wanted to be out there. And then when I published this book, all of a sudden you are out there, and the haters came out of the woodwork, you know, people that you knew and family but, you know, and I really started looking at it and why haters are out there and what they represent. But haters don't hate on things that aren't significant. So if you do have haters out there, look at it as, hey, I'm on the right path here, because haters aren't hating people who aren't successful, who aren't significant, who aren't out there doing something that's changing things, because there's no need for it. And, you know, again, you realize why haters are doing it. You realize it has really little to do about you and much to do about them. But yeah, I mean, it's not easy to have people out there, but when you look at it that way, again, giving it that meaning is, if there's haters out there, I must be on the right track. I must be doing something that's going to, you know, change something. And another analogy that I love is, you know, the guy talked about the Coast Guard swimmers who jump out of these helicopters to save a boat crash. And typically there's way more people to be rescued than they can rescue. And when they jump in the water, he's like, do you know who they go and save first? It's the people who are swimming towards them. It's not the people who are fighting them. It's not the people splashing stuff in their face. It's the people who are swimming towards them. And that's the motto that I took when I put myself out there now is I'm not out there for the haters. I'm not out there for the people who are going to splash water in my face and tell me I'm not doing something right. I'm out there for the people who are swimming towards me and want to hear it and who I connect with. And that's who I'm going to try to save. That's who I'm going to try to help them, change their lives and help them live better lives.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. We're getting ready to do a promotion for the show, and it's a mastermind group that we're calling the Create a New Tomorrow Mastermind. And part of the premise of this is a lot of what we've been talking about, which is doing your 100-year, 50-year, 25-year, 10-year, 5-year, 1-year plans. And I know that sounds a lot to some people, but until you know where you're going, and where you've been, you're never going to be able to accomplish the goals that have set out for you. And we're doing this a little bit differently because we address the health concerns as well as the business concerns, as well as the life concerns. It's kind of an all-encompassing kind of a life mastermind versus just generalized specific to business or those kinds of topics. But, it's funny to me because throughout my life, there's been things that I have not wanted to put out. And I haven't wanted to put out because I was afraid that somebody might steal the idea or do something with it that I don't want it to do, or they might ruin the thought of it, But I learned recently, just through my own processes, that I put things out because nowadays I don't care if somebody steals my idea, as long as the idea gets done. And the reason I'm doing this show is because so many of the things that I'm thinking about, I can't do them all on my own. So if I give the ideas away, they'll get done. And then I will be calmer because the things that I want to see in the world are going to be happening more.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to throw that out to the universe and to the audience that you want to get started, and who cares who gets the credit, frankly,
Yeah. I mean, Tesla did the same thing. Didn't he give away all of his patents? And, it wasn't about the money. It was about, getting that out in there into the world. So, I mean, that was like mind blowing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody who could literally the patents and the trademarks and those things are the intellectual property of this company and of this person. And yet he's giving them away and open sourcing them and encouraging people to use them in their projects and in what they're doing. I mean, that alone, you may not like Elon Musk, you may love him, you may not like Teslas, you might love Teslas, who knows what your feeling is, but the idea is that what he's doing is moving the world forward by the actions that he's taken, which is trusting that the idea is going to get out and that's going to make the world better. So who cares who owns it and gets credit for it?
Yeah, it's amazing. Amazing that he was willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And if more companies were to do that, guess what? We'd be able to move this world forward faster, fail forward fast, but move forward fast. And again, shift the world, create a new tomorrow, activate your vision for a better world, but do it now versus later. Because I think so many people are so stuck on what their obligations and responsibilities are versus how their ability to respond is and what they're doing about it, how their execution is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think we all have that fear when we have that great idea, that idea that's going to change everything, that we want to hold on to it. But another thing that I found in my, in my life is ideas, aren't where it's at. It's the execution on it. And you can give somebody the best idea in the world, and chances are, 99% of those people are never going to act on it anyhow. So I would be a little less fearful of somebody stealing your idea, because, there's just not that many people out there that are willing to put in the time and the effort and, to bring it to fruition.
Right. So just as a recap of that for the audience, put yourself and your stuff out there. Who cares who gets the credit for it, as long as it's getting done? So let's just finish this up, because we've had a great conversation and I really appreciate you. So, as I do with every episode, 3 to 4 actionable tips and tricks that the audience can do to create a new tomorrow today. And while we've already given them 100 of them during this interview, let's kind of condense them and give them very specific so that they can take it and do it.
Yeah, I mean, the first, I'll go back, things only have the meaning you're willing to give them. I think that concept in and of itself will change your life quicker than anything else. Look for the good in things. And then, my next concept is, be crystal clear on what you want in your life. Know exactly what it is, know when you want to have it, know why you want to do it. And then, that's the way that you come up with a plan to actually achieve it. And understand that, there's going to be obstacles. There's going to be struggles in your life. That's the way life is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be easy. So understand that those obstacles are going to come, and then don't be willing to give up on your dreams and your goals and your hopes and the life that you want to live because of obstacles. Get around it. They too will pass. And just know the circumstances that you're in right now are not going to be the circumstances that you're going to be in next week, next month, next year. So, if you're in some rough circumstances right now, know that they too will pass. But at the same time, success is not an event. Success is a process, and it's never ending. And we're always continuing to work on ourselves and continue to strive to become that best version of yourself that you possibly can. And, you owe it to the world to become the best version of yourself that you possibly can, and to be out there and give more than you take.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Nelson. I really appreciate it. I know the audience has gotten a lot out of this, if not just, the success from beginnings that you've created in your life, and the fact that you've turned it into a purpose to help other people do the same thing. That's just, it's an amazing thing. How can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you? And I do want to promote your book and your app. So why don't you tell them what that is, just a little bit about it and how they can find it? And
Sure. Yeah, thank you. You can go to NelsonTressler.com. Everything is there. My book, The Unlucky Sperm Club, You're Not a Victim of Your Circumstances, but a Product of Your Choices, is available everywhere books are sold. Amazon's probably the easiest place to get it. And then the app is called the IGOTSMARTER app. And it is on all the app sites, and you can download it. And right now we're giving away 30 free days so that you can try it out and make sure it's for you. And then it's only, $9.99 thereafter. I mean, there's no excuses. If you want to change your life and you want help doing it and a plan to do it, that app is, that's why I started that app.
yeah, so just give me a little bit more on the app and what its function is, so that
Sure.
we'll go there. They know what they're going there for.
Yeah. So the app is a goal fulfillment program. It's everything that I've learned over the last 25 years that I've, been a goal and personal development junkie. But, you're crystal clear. You do a self-assessment to make sure what your goals are going to be. And then there's all the concepts and the theories that I've used. I mean, we have a morning ritual to where you're giving gratitude. You're grateful for the circumstances you're in. You're not satisfied, but you're grateful, and you're learning personal development strategies throughout the app. You review your goals every single day. We only work on 3 goals at a time, and but you're designing what you're going to do that day, and the app automatically populates your task list through this morning ritual. So when you finish that, you've got a list of the things that you need to do specific to your goal, the most important thing of the day, all those things. So there's never a day, if you do your morning ritual, that you don't know what you need to do to accomplish your goals. And then the app has an evening ritual where you're reflecting upon your day, what worked, what didn't work, what did you learn from it? What were your biggest successes? And like I touched on before, the secret sauce is that opportunity to work with a success partner who's also trying to achieve their goals, and support and encourage each other through the app real time, so that you actually see your goals through to the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I know the audience is going to get a lot from that and from listening to this episode. So thank you again. This has been another episode of Create a New Tomorrow. I am your host, Ari Gronich, and just wanted to remind you about the Mastermind program that we're getting ready to launch. If you're interested in it, you're more than welcome to message me, comment to me, anywhere below the videos that are going to be here or on the podcast pages. And remember to like, subscribe, read, comment, rate, review, do all those things that helps move this conversation forward, because we love having these conversations and helping you guys so that you can create a new tomorrow today, activate your vision for a better world, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to this podcast. I appreciate all you do to create a new tomorrow for yourself and those around you. If you'd like to take this information further and are interested in joining a community of like-minded people who are all passionate about activating their vision for a better world, go to the website createanewtomorrow.com and find out how you can be part of making a bigger difference. I have a gift for you just for checking it out, and look forward to seeing you take the leap and joining our private paid mastermind community. Until then, see you on the next episode.